It's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shoppe, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And welcome to part 2 of today's video where Rachel will be answering all of your questions. She is a professional cake decorator. She owns her own storefront right here in the Lower Mainland in British Columbia. So if you guys are local, go and check her out, Happycakes, Surrey. She makes amazing cupcakes if you're not in the mood for a whole custom cake. So as promised, today is going to be very cake focused. So we're going to be asking you questions all about cake and more of the technical side of cake. And there's not going to be a whole lot of business talk in this video.
I'm excited. I love cake.
So let's get into it. If you were given a pass to design a cake however you wanted, then what would you do? And budget is also not a problem.
That's hard because what's the occasion?
Okay, let's do 2 different occasions.
Okay.
So let's say for a wedding. It's not a classic wedding.
Okay.
It's like a crazy fun, whatever wedding. What if you could choose the theme for their wedding and then make that cake, what would it be?
It would be whimsical and topsy-turvy and pastel-y and covered in candy.
Ooh, interesting. And how many tiers would you make it?
1 million. No. Realistically, 4 or 5.
What about for a children's party? And you, again, get to choose the theme.
Okay. It would be, the theme would be baking. And it would be a KitchenAid, like a 3D mixer.
Every child's dream.
And it would be functional.
Oh, that is cool. Let's do that.
Okay, we'll do it.
We're gonna make a functional KitchenAid mixer cake. That'll be so fun.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
We'll need someone to figure out the mechanics.
Yes. Why don't we just cover a KitchenAid in fun and call it a day? What's the weirdest request for a cake you've ever gotten?
We get a lot of inappropriate themed cakes.
Thank you for keeping it appropriate on this family channel.
Mostly bachelorette parties.
And do you still do them? I remember when we were working together, so my boss would never ask me to do these things, and Rachel always got stuck with them.
Totally. We do them on occasion. We haven't for a few years, which is great because I work with my mom. When I do have to do them, I'd be like, Mom, stay in the front of the shop.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm gonna get this done, box it up, and send it out the door.
Oh, that is so funny.
So awkward.
Yeah. And do you feel any type of way about doing them, or you're just like, you know what? Okay, teach their own.
I don't.
Because that's the last type of cake that I would ever want to consume or buy.
Yeah, it's not my ideal situation, but I'm not in the business of turning people away.
Yeah.
So we're here to make $1.
Yes. Yes. How do you cover a cake in fondant before it makes the fondant too sticky to smooth? I need all the fondant tips.
Yes. Few things. You need to be able to work fast, and you need your cake to not be frozen. So we will stack our cakes and put them in the freezer to set, and then crumb coat, and if they're setting for a while, we put it in the fridge. If it's gonna be fast, like this morning, I stacked and did a whole cake in the freezer because I knew I was covering it right away. If it has to sit for a long time, you put it in the fridge because if your cake is too cold, it's gonna sweat out right away and then you can't smooth and sharpen it.
And you're also gonna get bubbles forming on you.
Yeah. The fridge is your friend. The freezer is more of like a last
instant
minute
fix.
desperation. We use it a lot because we pump out so many cakes in a day, but ideally you're just working with a fridge. You'll have a better time.
Yeah, and I really think this is a timing thing. And even though we're saying especially on my tutorials, I'll say to you guys, okay, I'm gonna place that in the fridge overnight, for example. So I know my fridge's temperatures, I know how my fridge is gonna react, but your fridge might be up, might be really, really cold because that's the only thing you have in it. And then you're gonna end up with sweaty fondant problems.
Yeah.
And you're gonna think, oh, well, my fondant doesn't react the same way as this video or tutorial told me to do it, but it's really because everybody's room temperature and everybody's fridge is so different. So you have to work out the timing yourself.
Yeah, and then when you're actually covering the cake, you want to work quickly because the longer it's sitting on there, if it is too cold, the quicker it'll sweat. So if you just cover it, smooth it, sharpen it as fast as you can before it sweats, that's great too.
And we get a lot of questions about this, and So when I first started working at Happycakes, one of the number one rules was never ever place your fondant covered cake in the fridge. Now, we did things very differently at the beginning of Happycakes. And so I feel like, and again, it comes down to like cakes too cold and then room too warm and all that stuff. I now place my fully fondant covered cakes in the fridge and have zero issue. Never sweating out, nothing.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Totally depends on the fridge. We have 1, 2, 3 fridges at the shop. One doesn't work right now. And a freezer at the shop. One of the fridges is perfect. The other fridge is really condensation-y. So any fondant you put in that fridge will sweat and fall off and like colors bleed and it's a sad time. Our one fridge is great with it. So now we do put our fondant cakes in the fridge and just take them out early enough so that by the time they sweat out, it's dry for pickup.
Right. It's really interesting what you just said because I think a lot of people try to fix a sweaty cake.
You just let it live its life. It just has to come to room temperature basically, sweat it out, and it'll give you that perfect finish again.
Perfect. I have a question for fondant cakes. Does soft sponge support? Not really sure what the question is. I'm assuming they're asking like a softer cake that's more spongy.
Like I wouldn't cover angel food in fondant.
Oh, that's just asking for it.
I've also never done it. Yeah, we just work with regular sponge cakes. When I first started making cakes at home in high school, I would use like Betty Crocker cake mix, and that held up fine with fondant. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like I know a lot of people talk about cake mixes, and I feel like cake mix is actually a lot sturdier than I thought it was. Because I remember thinking, oh, I can't use that because it's going to fall apart on me. I won't be able to ice it. But it's really all about the coverage of your buttercream and making sure that you set that. And I honestly feel like any recipe other than angel food cake can do it. You can do it.
That'd be a good video for you.
Yeah.
Covering angel food cake and fondant.
We could try that.
Disaster.
Yeah. But I really feel like most standard cakes or cupcake recipes, if you crumb coat effectively, it's going to be able to hold up. Now, whether it will be able to hold up in all types of weather conditions is a completely different story.
Or even like as a tiered cake, you probably don't want to put a really fluffy light cake as your bottom tier.
Yeah, but even then, we've done it. Not like our first choice, but we've done it. And I feel like because you are supporting it with a board in between, which you should always do for all of your tiered cakes, you can make it work. But honestly, I would just choose a cake with better structural integrity if I was going to be selling tiered cake. Okay, the next question is, what was your favorite cake that you designed?
Oh, our Finding Nemo cake.
It's
so amazing.
Yeah, it was so nice.
Yeah.
Like, I had the vision in my head, and I always tell Rachel what my vision is for these things, especially because it's for my kids' birthday parties. But for some reason, it never turns out like what I actually think in my head. Like, parts of it do, but then our ideas just amalgamate together into like something.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So fun. Every cool cake I do becomes my new favorite cake, so that's the current favorite.
Yeah. We've had quite a few. We've done like that Minnie Mouse cake. Okay, that Minnie Mouse cake is still ridiculous to this day. Like, that was huge, that thing. Yeah, I'm really excited for just the upcoming things that we can finally do this year. And you guys are going to benefit from that too, because you're going to see us make them. And the more people we can invite to parties and stuff, the more cake you're going to see us do.
And Ashleigh's going to quit her job and work for me.
I think it would be so fun, and I get asked that all the time. Like, why aren't I a full-time YouTuber or cake decorator or baker or whatever? And I just love the element of teaching so much, but like, part of me is like, wow, how cool would that be to just day in, day out be able to film a ton of stuff with you and like just do really
It's cool that you get to do both, but also quit your job.
What macaron flavor is your favorite?
Any macaron that you make me is my favorite. Earl Grey and salted caramel are definitely up there. I also like anything that's like berry-y.
Interesting. For me, it's like salted caramel all the way. Salted caramel, or like, I love Nutella, so I love those types of flavors. I'm not actually into like the fruity flavors. as much for myself to consume.
Say goodbye to our friendship.
What box do you think is the best to use for sugar cookies that won't ruin the icing? Oh, I will answer this because she does not make sugar cookies, but when I was running my home baking business, I really like to use the flattest boxes possible because you waste a lot, like with boxes this big. Now, because I was doing cakes and cupcakes and cookies, sometimes I had to get all those boxes because realistically, when you're buying boxes in bulk, you're just going to end up with way too many different boxes if you order all those different types. Now, I think as a home baker, you can afford to do this, and I think it looks great when you have the window boxes because it just makes your product look so much better. So when you have those window boxes, but they're really like nice and flat and thin, like probably like that high, that's what I would recommend if you're gonna solely focus on doing sugar cookies. And the icing will not run if you make sure that everything is fully dried. So I would make it a point to make my cookies the day before the order was supposed to be picked up. So then that way you know it's going to be dry through and through. You also want to use my dehydration trick, which you can check out in the right-hand corner here if you are in a rush. So we got through all of the questions that my subscribers had, but I know you very well. And I noticed that you do very specific things. And I have seen a lot of different techniques, especially I feel like on Instagram, people are always trying new techniques for things.
Right.
And I follow suit with a lot of things that you do, I do on my channel. Like if you guys have watched how she covers a buttercream cake, I pretty much do it the same way. But I have been branching out a little bit more to get those really sharp edges. Now, is there a reason why you like the technique of, where you like put the buttercream on and then you swipe off, and actually you swipe towards yourself, I noticed, which is interesting because when she taught me, she did not swipe towards herself, she swiped out, and so I always swipe out.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, no, she did, and that's why I do it the way I do it. But I was watching her footage from this video, which you guys can see. It was where she made this candy cake explosion thing, and she was pulling towards herself. Interesting with that. But do you ever like try new techniques, or do you just kind of like to stick to what you do?
I stick to what I do because I've done it so often. That's how I get everything done so fast.
Right. Because like I find I have really a lot of difficulty with getting that sharp edge on a corner, like on a squared off cake. So I've started actually doing it with my X-Acto knife, which I have found has given me much better results. But what do you do?
On squares, I will take it's hard to do without a cake in front of you, but I scrape it one way and then the other way. Like I do it both ways on one side.
Yeah.
That makes
but
sense?
then what do you do with the excess that occurs?
You're scraping the excess into the side of the cake. If this was the corner.
Yeah.
Where are we? If this was the corner, I'd be scraping this way, not off.
But then how do you prevent this part from getting rounded?
It becomes sharp because you're scraping away from it.
This is but this is the thing about buttercream that I think is very challenging for new people, and obviously for me because I'm asking the question, but I think it's all in the way that you apply your buttercream too.
It's about every part of it, and everybody does things their own way. Like you hold your spatula backwards and
we have a big debate about this. But the one thing I think that we do that is very different than what I've seen in any video is where we take this, and I'll put a clip here, where we take the plastic edge and we cut our fondant off that way.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen, why did you start doing it that way?
I'm pretty sure when I worked at the first bakery I worked at, the decorator, like the head decorator from the head office location taught me how to do that. I'm pretty sure.
And you never use an X-Acto knife?
Never.
Unless it's a carved cake.
Yeah.
To take off excess.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting because I never, I've watched so many cake decorating videos, and that's the one thing that you and I both do that I don't see other people do.
I feel like
I don't even think some of the other cake decorators at your store do that.
No, Deanna doesn't. She uses a wheelie cutty.
Yeah. Why?
That's how I do it.
Yeah. It's the curvature of that plastic that makes it a lot easier. And I always get a cleaner cut.
Totally.
But it's so interesting. And there's been so many things that Rachel has taught me how to do that she no longer does.
It's true.
And it's like she's ever evolving, and so am I too. Like, I also change up the ways, but I feel like those basic things that you taught me, I still do.
Totally.
Even though sometimes you don't.
There's nothing wrong with it. I find whatever works for me, right? And you kind of discover new ways of doing things. For example, we don't crumb coat our cakes anymore. We just have taught ourselves how to put on enough so that when you spread it, it spreads evenly and there's no crumbs.
Yeah, when she told me that when I went to go stack at the shop the other day, like this was like a month ago, I was so shocked to hear that they don't crumb coat their cakes. But if you were to use Rachel's buttercream, American buttercream that she uses, it's very easy to work with.
We make it really thick, and we make it in big batches, and then we re-whip it in KitchenAid mixers, and we fill up the bowl all the way so that as you whip it, you get rid of all the air bubbles, so it's just silky smooth. So easy, so beautiful.
Yeah, if you guys struggle with air bubbles on your cake, that's the best way to get rid of them, is that you don't just, and I feel like this is a really big struggle of home bakers, because home bakers, you're not necessarily always going to have that amount to cover your KitchenAid beaters with. Like, it needs to be covered. And realistically, when I'm making a batch of buttercream, it probably only goes up about 3/4 of the way of the KitchenAid, and that's enough.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give for that?
There's ways to make your buttercream smooth. Like, when I did that candy cake here, we made just a small batch of buttercream,
that's
so
true.
It didn't get perfect. But there's ways when you're icing the cake to get rid of those bubbles, if you scrape enough times, if you heat up your scraper.
I find the heating method is what I use,
Yeah.
but I know that, and I always use a torch when I heat. I don't use hot water, because, but again, it's that extra step, you need to, but yeah, when you're working in a home baking business as opposed to when you're working in bulk, you're obviously going to have to pivot and do different things.
Yeah, and when you're working in bulk, there's also just not time for torches, like all that other stuff, right? Like, you just want everything to be fast. You make a big batch of buttercream and you do all the blue cakes at once, for example. So.
What about things that you used to do that you're like, no, that is absolutely not the way that I want to do things? What about how we used to let everything dry for like 10 years?
Yeah, I don't understand why that used to be a problem. We used to, back in the day, like if we were making, say, butterflies to go on a cake, we'd make them like 3 days in advance.
And they would get so dry, so brittle, and the color would fade out.
Totally. Now we just make everything on the spot and it's totally fine. So I don't know what really fixed that problem, but...
To me, I think what fixed it is the texture of the fondant. So even though we've always bought the same fondant, that has not changed.
Yeah.
But I think our additions to it help it.
Totally.
And how much cornstarch you're using and how much shortening you're using in there. And just the general feel of things.
Yeah, as you make more, you'll be able to like touch your piece of fondant and know how it's going to react to like standing up straight. So, and
not over thinning your fondant is really important. Like, truthfully, the only place where thin fondant has is for florals and things like that. But like, like standing butterflies, if you want a butterfly flying, you don't want to thin it out to a point where you do have to let it dry for like 48 hours until it's actually dry. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that I would make all the time.
Ooh, we used to put chocolate ganache as a cake filling. We used to offer it, and we stopped doing that because it's so expensive and takes so long to make. So we've just simplified our cake filling options.
And so I know a lot of my subscribers and my viewers have a big thing about wanting to cater to their customers. And so, for example, I'm a huge fan of chocolate ganache, and let's say I was your customer, I would be gravely disappointed that you don't offer chocolate ganache anymore. And you're going to get those customers that are going to say, I am gravely disappointed that you don't offer that. How do you handle that situation? How do you feel about that? Especially in the beginning. I mean, you're well into this now, but when in the beginning, when you're very more need your customers to grow, what would you do?
Hard to say in the beginning, because in the beginning it was very much like, let's do anything
that people ask of you.
To make $1, pay our rent, pay our bills, whatever. Now that we're more established, we kind of just have everything, it's like this, and if you want something we don't offer, these are the bakeries that do offer that, go see them. Like, we're just very
Yeah, and you have the luxury of that.
Totally.
Do you turn down certain cake designs?
Totally. All the time. 3D cars, I don't like making them. We've just stopped.
Oh wow, you just don't do them.
No. If people are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a 3D car cake that their kid or whoever is going to love, I don't want to make it and not have it live up to those expectations or deal with the stress of me having to make something that I'm not very good at.
One of the things with like 3D car cakes is it's all about ratios, and I think that's what makes them so tricky.
Totally.
And it's interesting. Like, she is obviously an amazing cake decorator and she does this full time, but when I was working at the bakery with her and she wasn't the owner, that owner actually asked me to do a lot of the car cakes and you to do particular things. So it really is about your strengths. Like, you're not going to be good at every single type of cake. And it's interesting because I kind of find that the things that I'm good at, I don't necessarily like to do. Like, for example, car cakes.
Right.
And like making those types of things.
Right.
And that's why you guys don't see a lot of that on this channel. And the things that I do like to do, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm the best at it, but I just like doing them. It's very interesting. That this wasn't asked specifically for this video, but you guys comment this on my channel over and over and over again, and I've kind of answered you guys somewhat in the comments, but I feel like getting another perspective is like super important. So one of the things that you guys say a lot is, I feel like my cakes aren't at X level yet, and so I don't feel right charging X price, or I don't even know if my cakes are that great, or my cakes are great but people aren't willing to pay those prices for them. And so that's, I think there was a lot of different kind of questions in that, but could you speak to any of those types of worries?
Yeah, there's a lot there. If you are charging what your cakes are worth and people aren't responding to that, you're not finding the right people. You don't bring the value down on what you're offering for the people. You find the people that will value what you're doing. If you're making cakes and you don't think you're at that level to be charging at, maybe don't charge at that level yet while you're still learning, and when you get there, you're there.
Yeah, my final advice always is, if you're making cakes and you're not finding it worth it, then don't do it. Like, honestly, that is what it is at the end of the day. And that's why a lot of us switch to baking just for joy. And why some people, though, it does work. And that's why she can own a storefront and, you know, do all that kind of stuff. So I hope we answered all your questions about cake decorating itself. I'm sure you guys are going to see way more tutorials featuring Rachel.
So fun.
Yeah, both here and at the bakery, because as we discussed, things are both very different at both places.
Good.
Today's subscriber submission sent in this lovely photo of all of these cookies that they made, and wow, they look so awesome. So go ahead and check out @CorsFrosting, drop them a like, drop them a comment, and be sure to follow them. And if you want to be one of my featured subscribers on my channel, be sure to follow me @SD Bake Shop on Instagram and tag me or send me a photo of anything that you would like featured. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!